2 days after my father's funeral, my stepmother kicked me out. The next morning, 5 black SUVs pulled up and she learned the house was mine. Before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe, and also drop a comment below sharing one life lesson you believe everyone should learn before it's too late. Your words might end up being the reason someone else finds strength in their darkest moment. When my mother passed away at just 10 years old, it was as if the world had lost its color overnight. My father was devastated beyond words, but he still tried to give me a life filled with as much love as he could manage. Every Sunday morning, without fail, he would make chocolate chip pancakes, letting me pour in far too many chips until the batter was more chocolate than pancake. He would leave small folded notes in my backpack. Notes that said things like, "You've got this, kiddo," or "I'm proud of you." Sometimes I would catch him in the garage late at night, shoulders shaking, thinking I was asleep, crying quietly so I wouldn't hear. He was shattered inside, but no matter how much he hurt, he was still my dad, still showing up for me in ways only he could. I was 14 when Linda stepped into our lives. She arrived at our front door wearing bright red lipstick and a smile that seemed warm from a distance. But when she looked at me, her eyes stayed cold. My father, lonely and wanting to believe in happiness again, thought she was wonderful. To be fair, she was good at playing the role, bringing him little gifts, laughing at his jokes, acting as if she cared. But I saw the truth right away. Her kindness always had strings attached, and I never qualified for the good version of her. Still, I wanted Dad to have joy again, especially after the years of watching Mom fight a losing battle with cancer. So I kept quiet, even if every instinct told me she wasn't who she pretended to be. 5 years later, without any warning, my father collapsed from a massive heart attack. No farewell, no chance to hold his hand one last time. Just gone. I had turned 19 the week before, fresh out of high school, still learning how to do grown-up things like scheduling my own doctor appointments. Now I was completely alone. The funeral hadn't even ended when Linda's behavior shifted. She walked through the house as if it belonged entirely to her, tossing out Dad's Sports Illustrated magazines and replacing family photos with her own. One afternoon, I looked out the window and saw her scrubbing my father's name off our mailbox with steel wool. When she saw me watching, she didn't even look embarrassed. She just kept scrubbing, then looked up and said, "Molly, you're not really family anymore, are you? It's time to find your own place." There was no point arguing. I packed 2 duffel bags with everything I owned. A few pairs of jeans, some t-shirts, my old Converse, toiletries, and my acoustic guitar, the one Dad bought me for my 16th birthday. On my way out, I passed Dad's old Yankees jacket hanging in the coat closet and couldn't bring myself to take it. Not yet. That night, I slept on my best friend Sarah's couch in her small downtown apartment. She didn't hesitate when I asked if I could stay. "Mi casa es su casa," she said, handing me a fuzzy blanket and a bottle of water. We didn't need to talk about what had happened. She just understood. I lay there staring at the ceiling fan, pressing my hands to my chest to keep from falling apart. The grief wasn't loud or dramatic. It was heavy, like carrying blocks of concrete inside my ribcage. Before I closed my eyes, I called Dad's older sister, Aunt Rebecca. She answered on the second ring, her voice full of shock and anger as I explained between sobs what Linda had done. I barely remember my words, just the long silence on her end, the kind of silence that comes from someone who's not just listening, but planning. Finally, she said, "I'll handle this, sweetheart. Are you safe at Sarah's? Or do I need to come get you tonight?" "I'm okay here," I managed to say. "But Aunt Rebecca, I don't know what to do." "Don't worry, Molly. Go back to the house tomorrow morning to get the rest of your things. I'll meet you there." I didn't understand what she meant, but something in her voice gave me hope, the first flicker of hope I'd felt since Dad died. The next morning, I drove my beat-up Honda Civic back to the house I'd lived in my entire life. The one with the wobbly front porch steps and the crooked birdhouse Dad and I built when I was 12. But when I pulled into the driveway, my heart skipped. 5 black Cadillac Escalades lined the curb like we were filming an FBI raid. 2 men in dark suits stood near the front door, one checking his Apple Watch, the other so still I watched for him to blink. Linda trying to keep me out with private security? I got out slowly, my shoulders tight, and rang the doorbell like I was visiting a stranger. Linda opened the door looking pale, her fake sweetness suddenly back in her voice. "Oh, Molly, you're here. I was just about to call you, honey." Before I could answer, Aunt Rebecca stepped into view behind her, wearing a charcoal business suit and power heels that clicked against the floor. She carried a thick manila folder and smiled at me, a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Perfect timing," she said. "Come in. My legal team is already set up in the living room." I stepped inside, my heart racing, still unsure of what was about to happen. Linda trailed behind us, her shoulders stiff, looking like she was caught between wanting to scream and wanting to vomit. In the living room, two lawyers sat at our dining table. One was older, calmly reading from a stack of documents. The other, younger, flipped through papers with the ease of someone who had done this thousands of times before. "This is ridiculous," Linda snapped, pacing like a caged animal. "You can't just show up here and—" Aunt Rebecca lifted one hand, her voice firm. "Sit down, Linda. Let's not make this more difficult than it needs to be." Linda sat, but barely. I stayed near the door, my pulse thudding in my ears, trying to understand what this gathering was about. "What's going on?" I whispered to Aunt Rebecca. Her expression softened when she looked at me. "Your father never put Linda on the deed, sweetheart. This house, along with all the property, is in a trust in your name. He set it up right after your 18th birthday. He didn't want Linda to know, and he never got the chance to tell you because—" She paused, her voice catching. "Because we didn't expect him to leave us so suddenly. He planned to tell you much later, but he made sure you would be protected." Took a moment for her words to sink in. "You mean, the house is mine?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The younger lawyer nodded and slid a folder toward Linda. "Here is a certified copy of the trust documentation, ma'am. You were allowed to live here temporarily, but now that the beneficiary has come of age and requested your removal, you have no legal right to remain on the property." Linda's face twisted with rage. "You can't just kick me out. You have exactly 1 hour to gather your personal clothing and toiletries," the lawyer said calmly. "Anything left behind will be considered abandoned property." A man in a black suit moved toward the stairs, crossing his arms. Aunt Rebecca answered my unspoken question before I could ask. "Private security," she said casually. "A business partner of mine owns the company. I didn't trust Linda to leave quietly." Linda stormed upstairs, slamming doors and muttering under her breath. 53 minutes later, she returned with 2 overstuffed suitcases. Her face was red, her eyes clear, no tears in sight. She paused at the door, looking like she wanted to say something. Maybe an apology, maybe a final insult. But she said nothing. She just walked out into the bright Colorado sunshine, dragging her bags behind her. One of the black Escalades followed slowly down the street until she was out of sight. I stood in the doorway for a long moment, feeling the air in the house shift. Then I walked into the kitchen, where Aunt Rebecca was already pouring 2 glasses of iced tea. We sat at the same table where I used to do my homework while Dad cooked. "You okay, sweetheart?" she asked gently. "I think so," I said, though it was more habit than truth. We talked for a while, eventually pulling out my mom's old recipe box. We decided to make her apple cinnamon bread. The smell filled the house, wrapping around me like a hug I didn't know I needed. Somewhere between mixing the batter and chopping walnuts, Aunt Rebecca spoke the words I had felt for years. "I never liked her, Molly. From day one, something about Linda felt off. But your dad, he wanted to believe she was good." As the bread baked, I walked through the house, barefoot, letting the creaks of the floorboards welcome me home. In Dad's bedroom, his flannel shirts still hung in the closet, smelling like coffee and his cologne. I pressed my face against one and just breathed. 3 months later, I was sitting on the front steps, drinking coffee from Dad's favorite Denver Broncos mug, watching the sunrise turn the street gold. I had kept most of Dad's things right where he left them, his reading glasses on the counter, his fishing hat by the back door. Not because I was stuck in the past, but because they made the house feel warm instead of empty. Life wasn't easy. Owning a house at 19 came with bills, repairs, and responsibilities I had never considered. But it was mine. And every Sunday, Aunt Rebecca came over for what we called recipe adventures, where we tried and often failed to recreate my mom's dishes. I heard through a neighbor that Linda had moved to Phoenix and even tried to contest the trust. Her lawyer told her she had no case. I didn't hate her anymore. I mostly felt sorry for her. She could have been part of something real, but she chose to see me as competition instead of family. Last week, I took Dad's Yankees jacket out of the closet and wore it to the grocery store. It fit perfectly. I think he would have liked that. And that's when I realized this house was never just a place I lived. It was my home, my safe place, my piece of him that no one could take away.